there used to great effect to bring the speed back from 350 knots back to 150. The positioning to cut down the display a low speed pass. The Gripen E is the single-seat model of the new generation Gripen. The F is the two-seater. Compared with the earlier C and D models, the aircraft can carry a greater weapons load, longer range. It's got a 30% more engine thrust than the earlier C model, and 30% more internal fuel. In December 2021, and it's been in service with the Brazilian Air Force since April 2022. And all of these are new build airframes rather than upgrades of existing ones. In the world to carry the Meteor air-to-air missile, a BVR missile that can track and kill targets at a range of up to 80 miles. The Gripen C can carry 4, whilst the Gripen E, as we see in front of us, can carry 7. There are 10 hard points under the wings of the Gripen E. It can also carry a couple of within visual range air-to-air missiles, the Iris T. Which is air-to-air, attack, air-to-surface, and spanning, which is reconnaissance. And Saab is also marketing the Gripen Maritime as a concept on the basis of the E model. That's the carrier-based derivative. As far as other customers for the Gripen E and F alongside Sweden and Brazil are concerned, Thailand is purchasing 12 of these aircraft, and Colombia has just confirmed a plan to buy 16. Now, one of the things that's always been key with Saab's jet fighters for a very, very long time has been excellent airfield performance to enable operation from, for example, road strips at time of war in Sweden, and they still practice for that regularly. So, This was built very much into the Griffon.
Yeah, absolutely, and part of the national infrastructure as well. You don't just get straight motorways by chance. And this is all being achieved without a brake chute and without reverse thrust. Just a very, very big and effective brakes coupled with a relatively light airframe.
And it's possible to achieve a turnaround between missions of just 15 minutes or so in the air-to-air roll. And there is a pretty short stop, but it could have brought that. It's not much shorter than that. That's under control in about 2,800 feet, which is outstanding. You won't see the canard.
Live links the location to Gunship, a pair of Apaches nearby.
Gunship, flight, static SAM, 160 degrees, 3 kilometers. Radio acquired, chapping, merge target. Good target, SDR, telling target, identified hostile SAM, 3.2 kilometers, dip 170, action missile. Instant strength, RSL flight tracking, valid range, firing.
A pair of Army Air Corps Apache AH-3 attack helicopters run in, firing a next-generation Hellfire missiles from up to 12 kilometers away. And now they turn and search for further targets.
Good mix on target, radar destroyed. Support armor and dismount team, reattack from the east.
Commander is satisfied that the air defense system is destroyed, so the aircraft can now climb above the range of machine guns. The job is now made easier to identify all enemy threats from above. This is done through the use of an advanced thermal targeting camera that conducts a set of pre-engagement checks.
Well recorded, arc clears, clearance self-defense, active support, and secondary, target down, selected, go call. Roger, going call, 4 rockets for effect, weapons armed and active. Detonate nav range, match and shoot. Call rockets, match and shoot, firing.
The enemy is seen fleeing the command post in soft-skinned vehicles. Gunships 1 and 2 have taken action to dive on the target, engage with 70mm high explosive hydro rockets. Vehicles and their command posts have been destroyed. The Apache air climbs to overwatch and return The Wildcat is rapidly repositioned to your right. It is ready to drop off from the boots to survive any fire damage. The gunship now moves into the nuclear. The air defense threat destroyed, the attack helicopters continue to provide security of the objective area while the Wildcat serves the team of Rangers from the Army's Special Operations Brigade. The Wildcat provides close support to the team with a 12.7mm heavy machine gun.
Good spot, target round. All targets destroyed, continuing mission.
nautical miles, which can be in half of external fuel tanks, giving us up to 4 hours and 30 minutes of flying time. Despite being a large and heavy helicopter, the Apache is highly maneuverable. As you can see here, it's 270-degree wing loader. The Apache's combat weight is nearly 10 times the carrier combination of the 16 Hellfire or Dragon missiles, 76 Tiger rockets, and 1,200 rounds of high explosive cannon. The flight control radar on top of the aircraft can detect 1,024 targets, including small drones. Prioritise the most dangerous 256, shoot the most dangerous 16, and pass all others via a data network to other aircraft. The aircraft knows that it is being tracked by enemy radar, and it can engage that radar with a Dragon missile beyond the line of sight. The M230 fires 11 rounds per second of high explosive armor-piercing ammunition. To our front, the Wildcat is a small, agile creature, approximately 170 aircraft per hour, and range 250 nautical miles. It can carry a cruise serve weapon system of 50 caliber. The crew coordinates all layered functions to facilitate a variety of air capabilities and auxiliary functionality. This makes the Wildcat so much more than a utility helicopter. Now you can also see the Apaches are repositioning, and you might want to get your cameras ready. The Wildcat today is flown by Captain Cy Berg, W1 Niall Sullivan, and crewed by Sergeant Sean Tolson. Gunship 1 was flown today by Major Nick Birrell and Major Andy Martin. Gunship 2 was flown by Major Rob McRae and Captain Jose Granell. All our crews are operational conversion instructors who perform and train for display in their spare time. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2025 Army Air Corps display team. It's not just the crews who get the aircraft here, it takes every member of 1st Aviation Brigade Combat Team, the UK's only fighting aviation brigade. The team would like to thank our sponsors, Anduril, Boeing, Event Horizon and Leonardo. On the final day, spent the pivotal moments of World War II, which subsequently became known as the Battle of Britain, serving on 85 Squadron, primarily at RAF Deptford in Essex. By the end of 1940, he had claimed 2 kills. But these were desperate times, and things were looking bleak as Germany prepared for invasion. But then, Paddy Hemingway, as a flying officer, was in the thick of aerial onslaught and survived 2 forced landings and was shot down 3 times.
Series of code names was Rivet Brass on the RC-135D of the US Air Force back in the early to mid-60s.
A very big aircraft looks like at 700 feet. A total of 32 airframes have been built since 1961, although the origins of this aircraft go back to the C-135 Stratolifter, which itself is based on the Boeing 707, which first flew in the 1950s. As of early 2023, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the RAF said its 3 rivet joints were almost twice as heavily committed as normal, operating in international airspace from the Barents Sea through the Baltics and NATO's eastern flank into the Black Sea and the eastern Mediterranean. And there have been many notable missions by these aircraft to date. I think, Mark, one of the most notable in September 22, when a Russian Sukhoi Su-27 flanker pilot tried to shoot down one of these aeroplanes. Yeah, that was very well documented at the time, and clearly worrying for the crew. However, it proves that the men and women of 51 Squadron do put themselves in harm's way on a daily basis, irrespective of what is being reported in the press. 51 Squadron, a very long and illustrious history. Bomber Squadron initially, and air transport. They actually took part in the Berlin airlift and then latterly disbanded in 1950. It reformed 8 years later in 1958, initially at RAF Watton and then RAF Whitton in Cambridgeshire in 1963, where its continued electronic intelligence and comms intelligence roles began and have maintained ever since. Yes, and that was with specialised versions of the de Havilland Comet before the Nimrod R1, of course the Nimrod based on the DH-106 Comet. I don't think we'll be seeing one of those at another British flying display over the course of this season, at least not in public.
An aircraft that's been seen in the UK, even if it's only been operated by the RAF for just over a decade, for a very long time. Mark mentioned RAF Mildenhall in Suffolk, the home base of the 100th Air Refuelling Wing.
At every 90 degrees, showcasing perfect roll control. In a second, flap will bring the jet into inverted flight. Upside down. rocket barrel rolls. Tight rolling spirals flow under high G. This is the highest spire for pass, flying at nearly 30 degrees angle of attack, just above slope speed, right at the limit of the airspeed. Slot is now flying approximately 120 miles. At midfield, full afterburner and a rocket-like vertical climb. Dedicated to all service members, their families, and the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. To all who serve, this one is for you. Get ready to take stunning photos on your right. The dedication starts. Unfortunately, the final salute from the Tiger demo team. One last pass to say goodbye and break into the circuit to land. If you have taken any photos or any videos today, tag us. We are on Instagram and Facebook at F16 Tiger Demo Team Poland. Follow us and share your best shots with the Tiger community.
into a maximum rate turn in front of us. But watch now as the PC9M regains the display line along the main runway. Because straight out of that, he rolls inverted. And now, again, he's going to be pushing. What's he feeling here, Mark? The blood is rushing to his head. He is hanging in the straps, if you like. The aircraft is upside down, he's pushing, so his head is going towards the canopy. Very uncomfortable. It does lead to sometimes problems with the eyes. You can have burst blood vessels. In our Phantom display, we had a -2. FGR4. And in it comes, running in from behind us. To be converted onto the Tornado GR4 before it was retired in early 2019. Just a slight hiatus there while the pilot dealt with an in-cockpit issue, but he's managed to fix that and he's going to be running back in from our left. Of course, these aircraft, Mark, so heavily engaged both in operations in Europe, but also in the Middle East.
Yeah, the Typhoon really for the last decade, since the GR4 went out of service, really has been the fast jet workhorse of the RAF. And as you said earlier, it's a swing roll aircraft, so it will get airborne and be able to conduct multi-missions from one takeoff to landing.
5 aileron rolls and successful.
Having done 3 aileron rolls as part of our Phantom display, I can assure you that at the end of 5, your head is still spinning. Quite often, display pilots will put in an opposite direction manoeuvre just to calm the inner ear down.
A very high angle of attack barrel roll, starting with the nose being pitched to... We'll be seeing now...
positioning for the high-speed pass. 1.95 Mach or 600 knots, whichever is reached first. Very quickly, using the excess energy to pull some tube to get the lift-induced drag started on the airplane. Okay. Okay, we've just been informed there's a slight unserviceability associated with the aircraft, so Nathan is positioning, reducing the speed to below 160 knots to lower the undercarriage and the flap for a normal landing in front of you. Unfortunately, that is the end of the Typhoon display for today.
But absolutely the right decision. Of course, safety absolutely paramount. No point continuing even with a minor snag. Absolutely. And unless you're listening on the airband radio, you won't have heard all of the talk that's going on between the pilot, air traffic controller, and then air traffic control liaising with the flight control committee and so on. A big safety team here to look after you primarily, but also the individuals that are displaying for us. Since 1979, amassing over 15 million flying hours. One of the main aims of this design was to make it transportable in a C-130 fleet transport. Also, the goal was to give it very high battlefield survivability. There's room for 11 in the cabin. It will carry a 4-ton unslung load. It had its combat baptism with the US Army as far back as the American invasion of Grenada in 1983. They were used in the invasion of Panama, Operation Just Cause in 1989. They were deployed in their hundreds to the Gulf in 1990 and conducted many airborne assaults in the ground phase of 91's Operation Desert Storm. Family of aircraft feature 4-bladed main and tail rotors. Interestingly, you can see that the tail rotor is canted at about 15 degrees from the vertical and therefore contributes to the overall lift provided. Pretty much everywhere American ground forces have been deployed over pretty much the past 30 years. Black Hawks have been there, notably in Somalia, the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq again, and they've always been stationed in large numbers with the US Army in Germany. This is the UH-60M model, a major upgrade with more efficient rotor blades, new avionics, infrared suppressors, more powerful General Electric T701 engines. First deliveries of these were in 2006. And this, as I say, from the Swedish Air Force, which initially bought the Black Hawk as an interim measure in 2012, while Sweden waited for its NH-90s. All 15 of the Black Hawks were delivered in just 16 months. The procurement became permanent. Straight away, they were deployed by the Swedes to Afghanistan for medical evacuation tasks.
particular variant is denoted as the HKP-16. It took me a while to work out why it was called that, until I realised it was the consonants out of the word helicopter in the Swedish spelling of the word. Yes, the Swedes have their own aircraft designation system, and there are various different HKPs, and this, the 16th so to be designated. Capacity on board for 4 stretcher cases and 2 accompanying doctors or nurses in the medical evacuation role. They can also be flown for firefighting with the so-called Bambi bucket, and the Swedes often use them also, or they can use them, to airlift the civil police if they're required to deploy in numbers to a particular scene. They've recently added extra fuel tankage to increase the range of these helicopters on the basis of experience they gained flying them operationally in Mali. And last July, Sweden confirmed that it would be ordering another dozen Black Hawks as part of the general strengthening of its military capabilities. So with over 5,000 produced, there's a number of other derivatives of the UH-60 Black Hawk, and they include the HH-60, known as the Payhawk, which is optimised for combat search and rescue, a specialist role in itself, the SH-60 Seahawk, a utility maritime helicopter, and the MH-60 Jayhawk, used by the US Coast Guard. There's even a further variant developed by Mitsubishi Industries for the Japanese Self-Defense Force.
The 4-man crew of this helicopter, headed by the pilot, Master Sergeant Frederick Lidmer. Naval variant of the Wildcat that we saw earlier on the display being demonstrated by the Army Air Corps.
Overall, the UK ordered 34 Wildcats for the Army and 28 for the Royal Navy to replace the Lynx in service with both of those arms. The Army variant is known as the Wildcat AH, or Attack Helicopter 1, and is primarily used for battlefield reconnaissance and transport.
For a measure of this aircraft's work, a masterpiece from Leonardo. On the right hand, the Spartan can absorb the intense G-forces of vertical maneuvers without compromising safety or performance. But now, the Spartan will pull off an aileron roll, or the elegance of a British Spitfire, just with more payload and far fewer topologies. Down to the ailerons, a quiet dance between lift and weight, where physics meets feeling and the Spartan connects sky to soul. Verticalizing again, transition maneuvers are displaying themselves. Graceful, essential, spectacular, at the heart of every move lies a silent dialogue between pilot and the rest of the crew. But while the pilots fly the show, the third crew member is the mission's backbone. Eyes at the back, hands on the cargo, and nerves of steel. He keeps the mission running like clockwork, even when the G's kick in. Big wing over. This is sweeping turn that fully displays the wingspan of over 28 meters. Oh, sorry, 94 feet.
See you, mate. Nice one. Cheers, Tom.
Prepared for the mission, whatever as may be, from hauling the cargo and moving troops to medical evacuation, airdrops, and is linking 46 fully geared paratroopers out the back in one go. Over 25,000 pounds of payload delivered with precision. It's been on the front line of the global crisis from Ebola to COVID-19. A tactical lifter, yes, but also a lifeline when it counts.
You take my bottle with you? Oh, okay.
For those who say that a transport aircraft cannot steer the shore, the Spartan now dives into a steep approach. 30 degrees of descent, across the controls, the drag maxed out. This isn't just a party trick, it's how you land fast, exactly where you need to, even under fire. A combat tactic disguised as an aerobatic maneuver. To the other, in peace, in crisis, or on show. This is the Spartan written in the skies and built to perform. Today, the Spartan showcases a new operational capability, aerial firefighting. At the heart of the system is a roll-on, roll-off tank unit, which can be installed in just a few hours. This turns the cargo hold into a fully functional firefighting bay. The version is designed to complement specialized assets like the cargo and flexible live fire concentrations. Clover Cuban. Today, the C-27J also flies with the United States Coast Guard markings on front lines of search and rescue missions. Far beyond, flying with Greece, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Mexico, Morocco, Romania, Chad, Liberia, Slovakia, Kenya, Zambia, Turkmenistan, and many more. And now, the sky is about to bloom a petal of clover leaf. Now, watch closely on way down. A gripping moment of dramatic irony. The bulky, hefty, chubby Spartan girl will perform the majestic arc of a central loop, nose to heavens. sperimentale, club, amici della sperimentale, your enthusiastic presence is always felt and always appreciated. Thanks for being part of this journey. And now a sharp 20-70-degree road to the right to turn surprisingly left. A maneuver going on British soil, crafted to outwit, to escape, to surprise. It carries the legacy of John Derry, test pilot, pioneer, and today its spirit assigns the silver trail, the Spartan painted across the purple sky. This is how the crew drives the demo flight to an epic final. Climbing or diving at nearly 4,000 feet a minute, the Spartan takes off and lands where others wouldn't dare. Sand, snow, or scraps of runway, no street, no surface, no worries. The Spartan needs not a runway, it only needs a mission. At the helm of the C-27J Spartan, never one for coloring outside the line. Francesco Buscemi by his side, the ever calm Michele Minato, co-pilot, power maestro, the angel with the scales, and deep in the cockpit, eyes scanning every gauge and flicker, the watchdog of the mission, the guy.
Na chuja, nie możesz tam się sklepać? Nie wiem.
The pilots of the two Wildcats for this year's Black Cat display are Lieutenant Tom Pethick and Lieutenant Commander Gary McCall. Both of them and their feet at a speed of 120 knots in a line astern formation. And watch out for their first manoeuvre, which is an opposing 180-degree wing over. There they are, just positioning precisely onto the line towards the display datum point, getting ready for that opposing wing over. Team leader pulling them up, and there they go with the split. Black 1 splitting left, Black 2 to the right. They're now heading away from us in parallel on the B-axis, descending to 100 feet, but then once again pulling up into further wing overs to cross over right in front of us.
So the team started in 2001 as the Lynx pair, and have been the first official Royal Naval flying display team since the Sharks disbanded with their Gazelles in the mid-1990s.
This type was originally known as the Lynx Wildcat, being an offshoot of the earlier Lynx family, but now known solely as the Wildcat. In for a cross. And they're coming now to a fast stop in line abreast, doing so pretty much precisely adjacent to the datum. And now they're going to spot turn through 90 degrees to face each other. and perform a climbing carousel through a turn of fully 450 degrees to finish up at an altitude of 500 feet. Wide range of armament can be fitted to the Wildcat in Royal Navy service, primarily the Stingray torpedo, also the 12.7mm caliber M3M machine gun mounted in the cabin, also the Martlet and Sea Venom missiles. And one of the protuberances you can see on the nose is the MX-15 Westcam electro-optical device, which allows the pilots to detect targets at pretty significant ranges in all weathers, day and night.
In Royal Naval Service, this is very much an attack helicopter, designated Wildcat HMA2. That stands for Helicopter Maritime Attack Mark II.
And so they're now heading away from us. Blacks 1 and 2 offset 45 degrees from the main B-axis, performing 225-degree wingovers to roll out on the main B-axis and again head in towards us. And when they reach the display datum, they'll be performing a climb in line abreast formation up to 500 feet. Black 1 on the right, Black 2 on the left. Descending 360-degree turns, and they'll be recovering in line abreast once again, side by side, at the display centre point at 100 feet. And then another rearwards transition. Giving you a bow, but the display far from over. Because it's into now another rearwards transition. There, an over-the-shoulder transition to the right and back into line astern.
The heart of the weapon system for those aircraft there on very good display, the electro-optical centre on the front, plus the sea scanning radar, which is there to support short-range and heavy strike anti-surface missiles. The Wildcat is also an interoperable platform, and that was proven in September 2022 when a maritime Wildcat laser designated a target, which was then attacked by an RAF Typhoon by a paid wave 4 bomb.
There's joint service operations, if ever there were, but we come now to the concluding manoeuvre of the display, accelerating in towards you, ready for their final crossing break. The 2025 Royal Navy Black Cats. To 42,000 feet. Alone, unarmed and unafraid was the motto of the Royal Air Force Photographic Reconnaissance Squadrons during World War II. and their contribution to the development of reconnaissance techniques, and thus to our Eyes in the Skies theme of React 25 is recalled by a special pair of photographic reconnaissance Spitfires that we're about to see. In the lead, the Merlin engine Spitfire PR11 of the Aircraft Restoration Company in Edgbaston. Accompanying it, the Griffin engine Spitfire PR19. The illustrious PC-9M of the Slovenian Air Force. And this is another display that starts straight from takeoff with a marvellous flourish. Straight into a barrel roll, retracting the undercarriage as he does so, and thereby capturing the display line before quarter rolling onto the knife edge, and then another quarter roll to the inverter. This is Captain Andrei to this display for this season compared to last. So, down he comes along the line with a 4-point hesitation roll, and now pull up into a humpty bump manoeuvre, but he never just pulls straight up into these manoeuvres. He often throws in a quarter roll or a half roll on the way up, or indeed on the way down out of them, and it was a half roll on the way up there. There are 20 manoeuvres listed in his sequence. There are far more than 20 manoeuvres in the display because most of the linking manoeuvres are also aerobatic.
Yeah, this is a really impressive display. Given the size and the stature and the lack of sound coming from this aircraft, between every manoeuvre there is a link manoeuvre, generally a roll or a derry turn, in order to introduce the next of the manoeuvres. And also, it's a very good use, in particular on windy days, where if he needs to extend perhaps to the northwest, instead of doing a single aileron roll, he may well punctuate that with 2 or 3.
So there we had a loop with a roll on the top, but now up for a stall turn, but a plentiful application of rudder, and round he goes for the stall turn, but you'll see him throwing in another vertical roll on the down line. This single turboprop aircraft, 950 shaft horsepower from the Pratt & Whitney Canada PT6A engine, top speed of about 368 miles an hour. Very popular airframe indeed around the world, and this is the most potent machine in the Slovenian inventory. And this is a vertical S manoeuvre, so watch him as he transcribes an S in the vertical. But this is with a half roll after he's performed both portions of the half loop. And as he apexes, he does so into a spin with either 4 1/4 or 4 3/4 turns of the spin, depending on which runway is in use. Now, why is that?
That's hugely impressive because he'll need to continue out on that direction in order to start his turn back. But most pilots would be lucky to finish a spin between 5 and 7, let alone 1/4. Very spirited performance, and a lot of people do try to compare the likes of the PC-9 and indeed the Tucano with that of the Hurricane. With 1149 horsepower from this Pratt & Whitney PTA 62 turboprop, it is very similar in power to the Merlin that the early Hawker Hurricanes had. However, this aircraft's gross weight is just over 5,000 pounds and the Hurricane was 7.5, so the power to weight ratio is far superior.
Taylor and roll running in there on the B axis towards us, as opposed to the A axis, which is the one parallel to. That mark is exceptionally uncomfortable.
Yeah, completely.
As a dirty roll, dirty thus with the gear extended.
And just a really good view of the 3 hard points under each wing. The inner 2 are rated at 250 kilograms and the outer 2 are rated at 110 10 kilograms, giving the aircraft quite a potent air-to-ground capability in the close air support role.
Yeah, apart from as a trainer, which is what the PC-9 is best known as, the Slovenians use it for close air support, light attack, convoy protection. They can intercept slow-moving targets with these aircraft. They can perform armed reconnaissances. On those hard points that Mark just mentioned, they can carry Mark 82 bombs. They can even carry Sidewinder air-to-air missiles, gun pods, unguided rockets, and other stores. To the inverted, and now we're going to see a complete outside loop. But not just that, because he should be performing a complete roll at the apex of the loop as well. See what I mean about this being a technically demanding display?
And a beautiful transition there. No dishing out whatsoever in going from negative G to positive G for the roll. With this hugely impressive performance, plus the utility of the aircraft, no surprise.
flown in the flying programme at the Air Tattoo. Like the NH90 we saw earlier, this is a multi-purpose, multi-role helicopter conceived by a multinational consortium, in this case Augusta Western, which were then separate companies. They came together in a consortium called 18 Industries, and the intention was, once again, to meet both general utility and shipborne requirements. And they had done so with, in this case, a 3-engined helicopter. And that area of search and rescue coverage takes in an area from its own coastline well out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and that includes the major air and sea routes to North America. So it's got to be very well equipped, and with the Merlin it certainly is. It brought many new capabilities for the Portuguese Air Force. It's the first helicopter type it's operated to have a so-called glass cockpit with digital as opposed to analog displays. The crew members are equipped with night vision goggles for nocturnal missions, and there's a whole range of modern sensors on board. Crucially, it almost doubled the capacity compared with the Puma, from 18 people that it could carry to 35, and the radius of action of the Puma was 200 nautical miles. The Merlin can manage around 400 if an extra fuel tank is installed in the cargo bay.
So the Portuguese Air Force, and specifically 751 Squadron, as we see here in front of us, known as the Pumas, they maintain a 24-hour alert service, so they're ready to intervene in the case of a distress call coming from anywhere inside their area of responsibility. And as Ben said, this extends well beyond the Portuguese mainland, out to the Azores and as far south as Madeira.
Merlins are kept on 24-hour standby at the main base of this unit, Squadron 751 at Montijo near Lisbon, also at Porto Santo on Madeira, and there's another unit now, Esquadra 752, stationed at Lajes in the Azores. And they can fly sorties up to 8 hours in duration. The longest distance flown search and rescue work with the Merlin is its autopilot, including what's known as the AFCS, the Automatic Flight Control System. That maintains the helicopter's speed and altitude, and it can move the helicopter down to a hovering point set by the pilot, so they can hover over the sea at night with no visual references. So now we are seeing a rescue swimmer from Esquadra 751 being lowered to the ground to attend to the casualty. They're part of the 5-strong crew operating the Merlin, the full complement, pilot in command, co-pilot, systems operator, rescue swimmer and flight nurse. Positioning the casualty now into the stretcher. We've got fairly benign conditions for this today, but it's still not entirely benign for the rescue swimmer and the casualty because of the rotor downwash from what is a large helicopter. The pilot in command can't see anything below him at this point. Everything's being described to him by the system operator,
providing with a constant flow of information as to the progress of the recovery. And it's that operator who instructs the pilot to move the aeroplane. Three engines, a trio of Rolls-Royce Turbomeca RTM 322s, just over 2,300 shaft horsepower each. There were different engine options available, the RTM 322 and General Electric's CT7 Leonardo, which now manufactures the AW101, now own the opposite with the CT7. Spiralling vertical departure and a very vertiginous dive. To see them coming past for a final salute to all of you. Esquadra 751's motto is "So others may live," and that they've certainly lived up to, both with their previous equipment, the Puma, and now this, the Merlin. And this is another part of our Eyes in the Skies theme, because search and rescue helicopters are very much a part of that. This year is the 80th anniversary of rotary wing search and rescue missions, and we've got really good representation of that across the static parks and the flying displays over the 3 days of Riyadh. Part of the Eyes in the Skies theme is a Royal Navy Merlin HM2, which can... The helicopter pilot is today by Major Rodolfo.
control of wings organised on a regional basis. This one comes to us from Fighter Squadron 11, part of Lapland Air Command.
Slow speed
action aircraft around the fringes of regional airspace over the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea. Onto the knife edge. And into a barrel roll, extending the undercarriage prior to landing. Finland was already increasing its cooperation with NATO before Finland became a full member of the NATO alliance in April 2023.
18 started appearing at air shows and started performing these slow-speed passes, they were like nothing we'd ever seen before from a conventional fixed-wing fighter, were they? Yes, and certain different elements there from the sequence we saw earlier from the other of the two Finnish Hornet display pilots. Once again, the aircraft and pilot from Fighter Squadron 11, part of Lapland Air Command, stationed at Rovaniemi, and on that occasion it was Captain Petteri Kairinen at the controls of the FA-18C Hornet.
It takes the whole force to catch those giants.
So, if you see one ice
And here comes the Red Arrows forward.
An extremely busy season so far for us. We've conducted our spring training exercise. We started our first display at the first week of June, and it's been every weekend all the way through. We've done about 65 displays this season, countless numerous flight paths, both official and unofficial. And then of course we'll be going all the way through to October to complete our 2025 display. Of course, one of the roles of the Red Arrows is to represent the Royal Air Force, and and his whole force personnel, who are still as busy today as we always have been, building the operational mindset that we need to face the threats that we do, enhancing our resilience, our readiness and our agility. The Royal Air Force, its purpose is to provide global air and space power to protect our nation and help it try to get to net zero by in the future, so hopefully we'll be able to carry that on always in the future. But please put your hands together for the 2025 Royal Air Force Air Majesty. It's the
and twist it around to the right, which indicates to me he's taken the show rolling. You can see that top side pass of the amateur league battle, and soon you'll see the aircraft start to collapse and form our world famous Diamond 9. Leading the team for his second year as Red One, the team leader is squad leader John Bond, known as Bondy. He's been in the Red Arrows for 7 years, his second year as the team leader. He's a former Typhoon pilot, former qualified flying instructor on the Tucano, as well as flying the Tucano display in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, once again, our Diamond 9 from the right, it's the Red Arrows. Uniquely, he was taken from training as a student, made straight into an instructor role on the Hawk T-Mark 1, before then completing his own training, joined the Typhoon Force on 3 Squadron, where he served on operations over Iraq and Syria. He then became an instructor on 29 Squadron, the Operational Conversion Unit, all based at RAF Consby in Lincolnshire. You'll now see the sensors make their way forwards as 8 and 9 move their way left and right. For one of the widest shapes that we fly, in from the left. This is the Swan.
Out, rolling, out.
You can hear those commands from Red One. That means all the pilots put their control column on certain words that is Red One. And then 8 and 9 on the outside put them in just a little bit early to those on the inside. 8 and 9 now collapsing behind Reds 2 and 3 for one of the most iconic shapes in aviation history. The smoke comes on. This is Concorde. On the left-hand side of that centre stem is Red 3, Flight Lieutenant Andrew McEwen, known as Hacker. Hacker is in his first year. Joining the world famous 617 Squadron based at RAF, where he flew the Royal Air Force latest fighter, the 5th generation F-35B. 11 pilots on Red Arrows, as said, mentioned Wing Commander Adam Collins, Officer Commanding Raphael, myself, Red 10, former Tornado TR4 pilot, former qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark 2, and this is my 4th and final year on the Red Arrows. The team starts to move in 2025, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Royal Air Force Typhoon display. So in from the right, with a nod to that display team, this is the Typhoon Roll. References from Red 1. Squad leader Chris McCann, Red 4, is in his second year on the team. Once again, he was taken from training in operations over Afghanistan. The team now to make their way forwards. Of course, everyone knows the Royal Air Force is famous for its operations in the air domain, but now we have a capability in both space and cyber. With a nod to our unique capability in those domains, in from the left, this is Apollo. All the pilots must have at least 1,000 to 1,500 sifting down to the final 9. Those 9 join us on our spring home training exercise. They go through the formal flight test, formal interview, mock media interview and peer review before we bring them down to the final 2 or 3, who then become the pilots for next year's season. Reds 8 and 9 moved outwards, Reds 6 and 7 slipping behind Reds 2 and 3. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get your cameras ready. Bring them in from the left. The smoke will come on for the colourful Big Vixen. In the display, we use this technique to enhance those manoeuvres. You now see Reds 6 and 7 sitting trail on Red 1, Reds 8 and 9 move into the trail. For one of the most popular, if not the most popular manoeuvre, Red Arrows fly. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get your cameras poised and ready. From the right, it's tornado time! 8 and 9, roll goes. Red 8 and 9 roll around the smoke of the rest of the formation. But watch for the come change as Red 1 brings them down the line. About the pilots in the Red Arrows. Of course, the Red Arrows is not just about the pilots. We have a team of over 140 personnel. 120 of them are the engineers, the logisticians, the administrations, the public relations. As we go into the second half, we start in the same way we did last year. As we go into the second half, we now go down to 2 distinct sections. Off to the left-hand side, we've got Red 125, known as Enid. Named after Enid Blyton's famous 5. Off to the right-hand side, 6, 7, 8 and 9, known as Hannah. Named after squad leader Ray Hannah. One of the first members to join the Red Arrows, he's the only team leader to lead the team for 4 consecutive years. He also took the team from a 7 to a 9 ship and formed our world-famous Diamond 9. Enid from the left, Hannah from the right, for the 5-4 cross.
Oh my God, that's
Enid to our right-hand side, Red 4 sits in behind Red 1, Red 5 sits in trail. smoke of Enid in the Twister. Number 5 is flight attendant Dustin Wales, known as Dusty. Dusty is in his second year on the team, originally from Zimbabwe.
You're looking for the nose light twinkling in the distance of 6, 7, 8 and 9. Red and blue command from red 8 and 9.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get your cameras ready for the Hannah break. Red 6 and 8 to the left hand side. Team, a former Typhoon pilot, former qualified weapons instructor on the Typhoon, where he would teach all weapons technicalities and tactics to the entire Typhoon force. Each pair will put about 2,000 feet, they'll dive down to the airfield, only 100 feet with a closed speed of over 900 miles per hour. As Hannah perform the Hannah Pass. Red 6 off to our right hand side, coming up, followed by red 7 to our left hand side. Red 7 is 18Jul25 Hyundai, second year. Get down as they form the inverted V. All the way to our left-hand side, we can see the nose light over a 9 running in, over 500 miles per hour, as he performs the Deuce! Red 9 off to our right-hand side is Clayton and Ollie Suckling. Ollie is in his third year on the team, a former Tornado GR4 pilot, former qualified flying shooter on the Hawk Team Mark 2. Coming in from the top right to spin hard is Red 8 Clayton Rich Walker, an highly experienced operator having flown Typhoon and Harrier, as well as being a qualified flying shooter on the Hawk Team Mark 2. Once again, that closing speed of over 900 miles per hour. Each aircraft performing a barrel roll before crossing once again at only 30 metres apart, wingtip to wingtip. sky in the Serpent. Another first for today, the Red Arrows are flying with a sustainable smoke fuel. It's hydro-treated vegetable oil, it's 100% blend. The Red Arrows are the first and only team to use both renewable aviation fuel and smoke fuel. The smoke fuel promotes innovation, British excellence, and of course that reduces our emissions and is better for the environment. And as I said, we are one of the first, if not the first team, to use both sustainable fuel and smoke. Reds 2 and 3 move up alongside Reds 1. They're looking 90 degrees along their shoulder line, working extremely hard, pulling up to 3G, keeping that turn on 3 to 4G. Coming in from the right, the smoke comes on in the Tango. The motto of the Red Arrows is the CLAT, and that means excellence. And we're striving for excellence in everything that you do. The chainsaw. Red 6 and 9 working extremely hard. So down 30 seconds. Conversely, they now roll the correct way up. 2 and 3, roll goes. 2 and 3, roll to the outside of the formation. Clear goes. Reds 4 and 5 roll to the outside of the formation in one of the hardest manoeuvres for our new pilots to master each year. This is romance. As Enid into our right hand side, look directly to... Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get yourselves ready for the second manoeuvre, our newest manoeuvre of 2025, with its little surprise. We can see 6, we can see 8, we can see 9, but there is Red 7 hiding in the smoke of Red 6 in the Tempest.
Also, during show days, their primary aim is to provide a safe airfield environment to rehearse and validate the displays prior to the show day, and obviously on a day like this to support the flying display director in delivering the best air show in the world. But of course it doesn't finish there, as on Monday there are in excess of 200 aircraft that will disperse from RAF Fairford to all corners of the globe, and that has to be done in a safe and effective way.
So who are these people? Well, firstly, they are all professional air traffic controllers from around the country. This year, 14 of them representing London Heathrow, London Gatwick, Manchester, East Midlands, Guernsey Airport, and the CAA. But secondly, they are all volunteers. F-35B Lightning.
Apologies for the short notice there. We were told it was going to be on the hour. That's the operational conversion unit for the UK's Lightning Force. We're going to see the aircraft turning back onto the runway heading, bringing it into the hopper before departing. It's not possible to mount any more of a demonstration of an RAF F-35 this year due to the fleet's operational commitments. HMS Prince of Wales is of course now operational as the UK's second Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier, and it's the UK's fleet flagship, and it's currently leading the carrier strike group on an 8-month deployment called Operation HIMARS, which started in April and has now reached Asia.
Of the jet.
And I think